Welcome back to another edition of Truth Seekers with Coach Nick and myself, Coach Josh. We have Melissa joining us today. Very excited about today's topic is awareness, maybe with a little meditation sprinkled in there. So awareness is so important to what we do as coaches. At Pro Advisor Coach, we have our AAA approach, which is awareness, action plan, and achievement. And you have to identify where you would like to go and the reasons that you're not achieving that in order to come up with the action plan and then achievement along the way. So maybe we can open up an initial question to Melissa with how you use awareness in your life, whether that means, personally, professionally. What does awareness mean to you?
Well, awareness means to me is just being, having that connection with my mind and my body and knowing what's going on in my body at a certain time and being able to recognize and then kind of identify and just allow it to happen. Like if I'm having, tightness in my chest or something like that, I can recognize that and then kind of flow through that instead of getting stuck on it. Whereas when you have a disconnect between your mind and body, you don't really understand what's happening.
So it's a somewhat holistic approach and multidimensional.
Yes.
And it's what you're getting at is you're becoming attuned to what's uncomfortable. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes. So then you can properly, breathing exercises, whatever you need to do to get back to like a baseline type thing. And you can use that in every aspect of your life because you're constantly feeling your emotions and your feelings and the visceral sensations that you're having. So if you're kind of in tune with that, you know where it's stemming from and then how to progress from there.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. I think so many people ignore those feelings. They have their mindset on something that they think they want in their lives or what success means, and sometimes along the way that uncomfortability could be like a feedback loop for us. Nick, what does that mean to you? Do you find that in your everyday life with the people that you encounter with that uncomfortability is a sign, or maybe you could talk about how you use awareness?
Yeah, it's cool. Very, very cool. Thanks, Melissa, for starting us off there. I love it. Straight in the deep stuff, the good stuff, for sure. It's super interesting because it's like if you're not aware of those things at that level, like you're not in tune with them, that they just grow to a point where they just take over you. And at that point, like you just lose that awareness, right? You lose the awareness, you lose that perspective, and it's just whatever comes out, right? At that point, it's like it's too late. You're in the battle, like you're slinging swords around, right? You don't know what's going to happen, but so you want to be able to come back and see it, because I think that's the interesting part of it as well, to be able to do that, and just to know, like when you feel it, it's like, that curiosity around what is that, like what's happening there, like what sort of action should I be taking that I'm not right now, that's like allowing that little monster to start to grow inside me. And you want to make sure you kill that monster while it's young, or at least like hear it out. But yeah, it shows up all the time and everything, and everything that I do. And Coach, we were talking earlier about that, right? It's just like, what is that? Like that feeling inside me, what's that resistance I'm getting? Because whatever we resist persists. And so it's using it because it's valuable. It's there. It's helping us out. Like there's that part of us that just knows more than we do. Tuning in for sure, just as you said, Melissa.
Yeah, that's your just your brain and your like most primitive parts of your brain that are just kind of taking over. And I like to listen to a meditation teacher she's mindfulness meditation, named Tara Brach, and she talks a lot about being hijacked by your limbic system, which controls your emotions and whatnot, and then realizing what's happening and being curious, like you said, being curious and bringing that curiosity to what exactly is happening here, and then being able to move forward from there. And when you do that, you're just more in the present moment. So you're more aware of what's going on. And it starts with being in tune with yourself so that you can be in tune with others.
Yeah. What happens if you don't?
I'm sorry?
What happens if you don't?
you just get carried away and you don't know what's happening. It builds up. It's that just, constant movement. And one day it blows up in your face, in whatever type of way that is for you.
Yeah.
I want to make an analogy, but you guys, we have to check me here if this doesn't apply. But I almost, for whatever reason, I'm getting the image of like drinking alcohol. So this is interesting for Nick and I because we're trying to do like dry right now. But alcohol is interesting because after a couple of drinks, you loosen up and it's good to have that line of awareness where you're aware of what's happening, but you're loose and you're letting it flow. But at a certain point with too much alcohol, you lose that level of awareness. And I think of like, you think of another analogy, like watching yourself on video or hearing yourself talk. You're like, is that me? Do I sound like that? Do I look like that? Like to not have that level of awareness with what you're doing on a daily basis. Like just think if you go through life like that without ever checking in on that awareness, like what are the dangers of that? And what's the costs for not checking in to make sure you're on alignment with what success means to you?
Yeah, you just kind of lose control, and then it just takes you away from whatever your goals are, whether it's being successful or just being present in the moment and connecting with someone, or focusing on a task that you're doing. It just takes you away. So the whole thing is to be present in the moment so that you can appreciate it, because appreciation is obviously very important for just being happy and continuing to do well.
Yeah.
That's a fine line to me too, because awareness and being present, like you want to be able to lose yourself in the moment and be a part of what's happening. But at the same time, you want to be aware of what's happening. It's like you say, live in the moment. Well, you lived in this moment, you got to live in the next one and the next one. And it's a constant and like ever ongoing thing. And it's kind of tough to wrap your brain around that. But if you can live in that, there's real beauty in that, I think.
It is. And it's not just, I think the perfect scenario would to be always be in the present moment, but we're human and we're not always going to be our best selves or completely focused on something. And it's just having that in the back of your head, knowing that, oh, I'm not here, I'm in my head. So let me come back and be here. And just those moments build up, they add up. And in a little while, you realize how much you're actually more present with yourself and with others and with your work.
The danger, yeah, thanks, Melissa. The danger is though, right? Because when you are in your head, as you put it, and to quote Tony Robbins, "Get in your head, you're dead." Right? If you are in your head, you don't see it.
No.
And that's the thing that scares me the most, because you can be like, oh, where did that 10 years just go? And I think a lot of people do that. Like I've been guilty of that myself for sure. Right? And it's like, it reminds me of that saying, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up. But I like to extend that and just think about it like it's not whether you're going to get up or not, it's how quickly you get up or not. So I think about the same thing. It's just we're going to get in our heads, it's going to happen. It's just how quickly can you get back? Like how quickly can you get back to where you want to be and save that time? Because that's stuff that keeps going. It doesn't care whether you're in your head or not.
No, it does not. And it's just bringing yourself back to those moments. And it's just building, it's a practice. It's not something that you decide one day, oh, I'm going to be more mindful or self-aware. It's a practice, and it's something that you have to work on daily. But it's rewarding because after a while, as with everything else, you see how much growth you've had in that. And really, it's just, connecting to yourself. So it makes you feel better, which is going to make every aspect of your life better.
Including the people who come in contact with you.
Yes.
Yeah, I just texted a friend. So it relates to meditation. I think meditation is the ultimate way to just quiet everything down and become aware. That's literally what it is. And I have friends tell me like, I can't do it. I do it wrong. There's no wrong way to do meditation. It's just you do it, and whatever comes up is you being aware of that. Now, if people might not like what they become aware of, and that's where the frustration comes in. But like I had a friend text me that he's going to try it for the first time today. And I said, that's the ultimate decision, to quieting your mind and letting like truth and your great abilities and what's meant for you to become aware of come into your life. And sometimes you can only do that in a meditative state where you're quieting everything else around you.
Definitely. And I think a lot of people, just the word meditation is kind of ominous to them. Like, it's scary to be in your brain. It is scary to be alone with your thoughts, especially when you haven't connected with yourself. But it is a practice, and it's just sitting down and just sitting down with yourself. And you can get to that point in plenty of different ways. You can do guided meditations. You can do, set a timer and do it yourself. You can meditate while you're, being creative. It's just being in the moment, and it's a practice. So eventually you're going to become better at it, and it's just a slow work.
I want to put Coach Nick on the spot for a second. I got a question. So when we become aware, like what about us is becoming aware? Because that's when we think of a thought or a concept, we can just as easily let that go. But when we're aware of being aware, like I feel like I'm in the Matrix here. Help me get out.
So what happens when we're aware of being unaware?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I guess the way I think about it would be that I can see myself in that third person. You can see perspective. You gain depth, sensory acuity for yourself, if you like. It's I can see that perspective, right? I can see that that I haven't got the horse blinders on right now. I can see more depth and availability. And to your point, Melissa, people don't do this, right? I was going to ask you, like, why do you think more people don't do it? And I think that you said there's some stuff loaded around the word meditation, but it's also people were just scared of it. So I think, back to your question, Coach, I think what it means is, where are you? What person are you? It just means that you're starting. It just means that you've hit you've given yourself permission to hit the reset button. Because we talk about awareness being so important, because without it, you can't do anything, because you can't see it. You just don't know what it is. Like, you can't see it for yourself. But it's not everything. Just having awareness isn't everything. Because here's the other thing: is you've got to move that to take some tangible action. Mm-hmm. And then tangible action creates results, creates more information, and you get more awareness from that, and you can keep on moving forward. And I think, to tie that in, then I'd love to hear your perspective from this, Melissa. Like, does it ever stop?
No, because it's just something that might come to you all the time. But I think awareness too is kind of transcending the moment a little bit, and then realizing that, yes, everything is just happening, and there can be good, there can be bad, but it really just is. And then it's how you react to it, or really respond, because you'd rather be responsive than reactive in your life. And when you're aware of yourself, you can respond from a true, like, in your heart way.
Oh yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that, because that just finished my thought. Like, the awareness leads to the opportunity to use our gift of choice.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is, right? It's like you've seen that there's something that's happening, and then there's an action to be taken, and in between, that's where you get to decide. Like, you get to choose what that is, right? You can allow yourself, and think about this in a practical situation as well, right? So if someone says something that might spark that reaction that we don't want to have, and then something comes out your mouth, that's done. If that meditation practice, mindfulness practice, awareness practice, whatever you want to call it, just gives you that, like, just part of a second, like that millisecond, just enough gap to enact the choice, and then you just get, and that's all you need. It's just that little bit of space, that tiny little bit of space, to allow you to be more conscious about your reaction. Therefore, well, as you say, it doesn't become a reaction, it's a response. Therefore, the result you get, you can see for yourself.
Definitely. Definitely. And I think when you're reactive, there's a lot more self-blame and you're kind of a lot harder on yourself. So when you do take that moment to just take a step back, think about whatever you want to do, or just think about what's going on in your body and then respond to whatever is happening in your life, you feel better in the future because you're not really dwelling on your actions. Like I know a lot of people, me personally, I'm definitely hard on myself and I think back and you could dwell on things and it's never, that doesn't really do you good. It's good to be self-aware, but it's not good to the point where it becomes detrimental to your mind. And just to be responsive is just a lot better. It brings you more peace of mind.
Yeah, I can appreciate what you just said there too, because that's part of what the mind scan is. And if you can remember that lower left corner is that self-empathy. If that circle is very negative, that's what that means, is that we're hard on yourself. So that's part of the awareness, just being aware of what's going on. Like you said, it's good for self-improvement. It's the most common trait of successful people is being hard on yourself, but it has to come from a healthy place instead of beating yourself up for, whatever scenarios you're playing over in your mind or conversations. How could I have done that better? If it's constantly beating yourself up, it might not be the healthiest. But if it's just awareness of like, yes, this is what happened. Oh, sure, maybe I could have done this in the future. This is how I can, be more effective in that scenario moving forward. Then that's where the real benefits of that, of that mindfulness happens. And I've always loved the concept of, like, human beings, the one thing we have over the rest of the animal kingdom is our ability to use our brains to not be reactive. Everything else is reactive in the animal kingdom. You give this stimulus, this is going to happen. Animals don't have the power to think about changing the course of their action based on their stimuli. Humans do. No matter what situation we're in, we can take it in, process it. As long as there's that gap to where we can be mindful of what we want our next action or thought or feeling to be, we can recognize how we're feeling in that moment and then kind of turn it into something that's going to be more positive for us.
I love that you bring that up, Josh, because that is just kind of, humans have the prefrontal cortex and it just, it only is completely formed when you're 25, and that's all of your behaviors, your complex emotions, and that's what we have, and we are able to do that, whereas other animals live from their more primitive brains, and we have the option to live above that. But we still get, we're still part of everything, and like we are reactive to that. So when you're reacting, you're living from those, primitive brain.
Like the reptilian brain, right?
Yeah, the reptilian brain.
Every once in a while it comes through, it overshadows the rest of it, the prefrontal cortex, as you said.
Yeah, so I think awareness and meditation, if that's, how you want to channel that. Awareness can be channeled through physical movement as well. So yoga is really big with mindfulness and awareness. Any type of sport, if you lose yourself in your sport and you're in flow at that moment, you're one with everything and everything's great. And you feel that, and then you can bring that to other aspects of your life because you know how good that feels.
It's very true, right? Because Coach Melissa, me and Josh are doing a workout challenge with each other at the moment as well. So we're doing some hard workouts, right? And so we were talking about this earlier. Hey, when you're doing that superset of like the additional leg like the single leg holds after doing all those squats, you can't think about anything else about reaction or fight or flight. You're like, all I care about right now is finishing this workout, right? I'm focused, right? So it's essentially a part of flow, right? And that's why it feels so good when you're done. Hey, I've never had a workout where I've got done and gone, I feel worse now. Right? Never. It's never happened.
Never.
So yeah, I've always found that something like, before I even understood about any of this stuff, I could see that from workouts. When I get done, like, I don't care about anything. So just, I'm good. I'm good to go.
This is a second conversation in a row, second week in a row we've been talking about flow. And I just love that. Like, you lose the concept of time. Last week's discussion was about time. You're just in the zone. And that's what, when you get good at meditation, when you practice it and it's like a muscle, and good at awareness, that's what it feels like. It feels like you're just in the zone of acknowledging and being present. And that's where like the really good stuff happens. Like you have thoughts that come to you and solutions for things that like you didn't even know you were capable of. That's why I love tapping into that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I also like to pair my mindfulness with journaling. I feel like it's just really, it really does a lot for me to write down what I'm thinking and then be able to reflect on that. Because, you know, Josh, we've talked about how many thoughts you have in a day, and I don't remember how many you said it was.
It's a lot.
Like nine. Yeah, a lot. And you know, they're very fleeting, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. But when you're writing them down and you're mindful of them, you can reflect on them. And then throughout my journaling, I've seen how in the beginning I really was kind of getting down on myself and thinking my journaling was really negative and it was always the same thing. But as it progressed, which I've been doing it consistently for about 2 years now, I can see where it's changed. So that also helps me being mindful, because, you know, you see the actual results of your practice.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I love that concept because yeah, it's a snapshot in time of where your brain is at, and you can look back and see where your brain was at, and over time, who knows what happens? Maybe you're just being more intentional about being positive, but at a certain point, something happens to where you're like, all right, well, I recognize that my thoughts, my writings are negative. Let's turn it around. How do we really want? If we want to be intentional about this, what do we really want out of this? And let's be positive. And then that's where it's effortless. It's flowing through you, and you're creating content that is serving you, serving your happiness, serving your success, whatever that means to you.
Makes me wonder about, you know, like the starting off on this journey as well, right? Because if you're like in it of, okay, I'm gonna do the meditation, I'm gonna mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, however you want to do it, I'm gonna pair it with journaling or some sort of writing. And you start to get what you, as you described, Melissa, when you first started doing it, negativity coming out. It like strikes me that there's some sort of danger. Like if we're not in, if something or someone's not there to guide us to why are we doing this? Like, why are we just exploring? Like, might we not go on the path we want to? I wonder what your thoughts are about that. Is it great to be in a place where you have someone saying, okay, go through this process, and as you start to see that awareness, that might be a bit scary. Move intentionally to where you want to go. Or do you think that's something that happens just innately?
I believe so. And as you progress through whatever you're doing, whatever exercise you're doing, if it's something with work, if it's something personal, you can see that growth through yourself. And then, you know, in my, you know, it's writing, so I can actually see what's happening, and it just eventually turns. Because I mean, this is maybe comes into where negative self-talk can be a good thing, because I'm, you know, thinking I'm journaling and I'm kind of beating myself up, and it's in the back of my head. So as I go on throughout the days and I journal, then I just kind of, you know, stop saying the negative things that are happening, and I'm more write about gratitude and anything like that.
So Melissa, is that still there? Do you still feel those negative things, and you just kind of like, you acknowledge that they're there and let them flow out?
Yes, I'll definitely, you know, still, because you need that release too. It feels good to kind of get it out and just kind of vent, but they just kind of flow through more. And I feel like I've had some really powerful experiences journaling where I've written things that I didn't even think that would like come to my brain or anything. And it's like, wow. And then you can reflect on that. And that's just part of it too. It's the good and the bad. But then the whole idea of mindfulness is kind of transcending that, right? So you're seeing the good and the bad as well. And then that all comes together to make whatever you're creating.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. I've had so many times in coaching calls where I've said something, I'm like, oh, well, I've never said that before. That was cool.
Yeah.
It's because you're in that moment. But yeah, I love what you said, because those two things together, you've got to have that compassion and curiosity about the things that are negative and why they're coming out of you. It's like, just let them be heard, right? Because that's all you as well, and it's all part of the power of of creating the wonderful balance and the biggest, the best person you can create for yourself. And I just want to like underscore the point, because for me at least, it's about realization that this doesn't go away, right? Because that, that reptilian brain of ours, like that's always going to kick in, it's always going to be there, and that's really helpful for us, right? It wants us to survive. It doesn't care if we're happy or not, though. It doesn't really care if we're happy, but it wants us to survive. So it's always going to be there. So like we have to be intentionally happy all the time, forever. So even if you, and I'd love to get you, like Coach yours and Melissa, your thoughts on this as well. Even if you're ingrained in your meditation practice for 10 years, you're like, I'm in a good place, and you stop, there's going to be some residual effect, but you are going to start the path the other direction, right? It's going to get worse. There's a certain baseline you've built up for sure, but it's not going to get better on its own. There's never a case where I'm done. I'm done with this. I can move on. It's always got to be there. Would you agree with that?
Definitely, I completely agree. And that's why it's called a practice, because it's something that you have to do. It's a muscle. It's your brain is a muscle, and you need, working it out is very important as working out your physical body, which a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on. And it's just as important to keep your brain healthy throughout your life. And neuroplasticity, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is something that's new in science, and your brain makes new connections based on what you kind of think the most. So if you're thinking negative thoughts, you're going to go down that rabbit hole, kind of, you're going to get carried away with yourself. But if you're taking a moment to take a step back and realize what's happening, and then make sure that your intention is to be positive and grateful or whatnot, then that your brain's going to reinforce that, and it's only going to make you better. And I think that's the epitome of working out your brain, is neuroplasticity, because we finally realized that that's real.
Yeah, awesome, love it.
Yeah, and just to expound upon that a little bit, I think it's one of Newton's laws, like the law of entropy, I think it's called. Like if we don't do anything, the world moves more towards chaos. So you have to be intentional about being happy, because the default is to not be happy or to be negative. There's all these, books on how to be happy. There's no books on how not to be happy. We all know how not to be happy. It's easy. It's simple for us. So it's the practice, like Melissa said, it's a practice, it's a muscle to continue to develop. And yes, you develop new baselines as you go, but you won't keep progressing unless you keep doing it. So the day that you stop progressing is the day that you stop reaping the benefits from it. So no, you don't go back and lose everything that you've worked on, but you can if you go long enough without it.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. And I love the actual science around the neuroplasticity, for sure. And it's like, it's what you focus on is what you get. Like the more intense focus you've got, you can build those new pathways. Doesn't matter how old you are, right? I think that's what the science says now, because we all know from kids' point of view, they have this plasticity, like it's for days, right? That's all they have, right? And that's why it's so easy for them to learn. But we can have it as adults. We just got to be intensely focused, and wherever we focus on is where our energy goes. We create those new pathways, create those new patterns. Hey, we can have whatever we want, as long as we just focus on it and intentional about it. Super cool. Super cool.
And so time is flying again. Let's wrap up with some takeaways here. I like one of the pillars I had was when Melissa said the thoughts, how many thoughts that we have. I like the concept of counting our thoughts. So we have between 15,000, here's a number, between 15,000 and 60,000 thoughts every day. So a good practice with meditating is counting your thoughts. It's making you aware and then letting it go. All right, there was thought number one. Oh, here's another one. Here's thought number two. So try counting your thoughts during your meditative or your mindfulness practice.
And it's also being aware of the fact that you can't turn your brain off. You're going to have those thoughts. And instead of beating yourself up, it's watching them come and then letting them go without judgment. And that's where you kind of deepen your practice, and you're able to get into more deeper states, because they're gonna come, but maybe you had an extra 10 seconds of kind of, peace or whatnot without another intrusive thought or, planning for the future or anything like that. And it's just, making that kind of extending that. And there's so many different ways that you can come to that peaceful, mindful state. It's really just connecting with your body, and then seeing how you can continue to bring that to yourself in the future.
Coach Nick, bring us home here.
Some stuff I wrote down and some really cool distinctions for me today. So thank you so much, Melissa. Like the reaction equals blame, where he talks about that. Like if you react, you tend to blame yourself more. And I think there's a fine line between what people think about is blame and responsibility. But I want to make it a much thicker line, because I think blame is not helpful. And people go through like levels of this, right? Because some people will blame outside things, like they'll blame the weather, they'll blame circumstances they can't control. And people love to do that because they can't fight back, right? They don't own back. Then the next level down is blaming other people. Well, that's not helpful either. And the next level up is blaming yourself, but that's not helpful either. Right? And so there's levels of that. And so if it's not blame, which is not helpful on any level, it's responsibility, and there is a big difference. And it's think about responsibility is just ability to respond. So if you've got that response rather than reaction, you're moving from blame to control. So I think that for me was the biggest distinction that I wanted to share.
Definitely. And I think non-judgment is a really big part of this, because you're going to mess up, you're going to make mistakes. That's part of life. That's how you learn. You can't learn unless you've made mistakes, and not judging yourself and being harsh on yourself is the best way to make sure that you can let yourself be curious and continue to learn throughout your life, because no one stops learning. The old, 100-year-olds are still learning. So.
Hey, back to choice. Absolutely. You get to choose. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like the concept of treating yourself like your best friend. Like, would you treat your best friend like that? Like beating yourself up? Would you beat your friend up? So it's treating yourself from a place of love where it's non-judgmental. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be a good ending point. Anything else from you guys?
No, I think that was it.
All right. Well, thank you both. We'll see you next time on Truth Seekers.